Top 10, you know you liked it a lot. Time to see who is the best and the worst at stuff. You know, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, NASCAR, wrestling. If I have to, so please join me. Why don't you read? This is Cutter's Top 10. Hey there, Heather, ho there. It's Jeff, Cutter, Diamond. We're ready to rumble. Oh. Hey there, Heather, ho there. It's Jeff, Cutter, Diamond with yet another top 10. Nope, it's not a top 10. Sorry, it's a top 15. It's a top 15 most tragic accidents in sports history. Now, obviously, I didn't want to rank these top 15 because, you know, tragic accidents should not be ranked. So here are 15 accidents. And they're in no particular order. Number 1, the 2010 Olympic luge accident. During a training run for the Winter Olympics in Vancouver on the luge, Georgian luger Nodar Kubartashvili, sorry, I have troubles with using European names, crashed and hit a metal pole, killing the 21-year-old. I know Watch Mojo put out their top 10 tragic deaths in sports history, and we saw the Nodar accident as he flew over a barrier and hit a pole. That was graphic. So anyway, Nodar told his father he was afraid of the tournament's track. And then the track was adjusted to slow the race down, and there were a lot of safety measures for luge. Too bad it had to happen in the wake of someone dying. Tragedy number 2, Ray Chapman's death from a baseball pitch. Ray Chapman was one of the best players on the Cleveland Indians. In 1920, he was 29, he was shortstop, and he was hoping to retire from baseball to spend more time with his wife, only if his team won the World Series. And on August 20th, 1920, in a game against the New York Yankees, Ray Chapman took a pitch to the head from Carl Mays that knocked him unconscious. Of course, this is before the batting helmet phenomenon. So anyway, Chapman did awake from his unconsciousness, but collapsed and he died in hospital. Chapman's death actually led to baseball's ban of the spitball, the pitch that killed him, and then batting helmets remained mandatory. But 2 decades after the accident, Cleveland did in fact win the World Series as is, and dedicated Ray Chapman. It actually helped the career of Joel Sewell, one of the best players to rarely strike out. If you look at his strikeout numbers, they're amazing. Tragedy number 3, Dan Snyder's death in a car accident. The Elmira native, close to where I am from, played 49 games for the Atlanta Thrashers in 2003 and was going to do okay. But in 2003, he was a passenger in a Ferrari driven by Danny Heatley. Driving 80 miles per hour, Heatley lost control of the car and crashed into a brick and iron fence. The insider fell in a coma and died 6 days later at the age of 25. Heatley was charged with first-degree vehicular homicide and reckless driving, but Dan Snyder's family saved him from jail time. Heatley pled guilty to less charges and got 3 years probation. Some say that Danny Heatley, when that car crash happened, it wrecked him. And it wrecked things that NHL 2004 decided to change their cover boy from Danny Heatley to Joe Sakic. By the way, if you didn't know that. Anyway, number 4, Payne Stewart's plane crash. Known for his flashing attire and even wearing a Bears little duffel cap, wearing bear stuff, Payne Stewart had 11 PGA Tournament victories, including 3 majors. And he actually drained the longest U.S. Open winning putt in history to par 18 and beat Phil Mickelson by a stroke. One of 6 times Phil Mickelson finished runner-up in the U.S. Open. He has never won it. But later in 99, in October, he boarded a small plane from Orlando to Texas. Unfortunately, there was a cabin leak and air pressure was lost and the plane nosedived and crashed. But by the time the plane crashed, Stewart and 5 others died from lack of oxygen. Payne Stewart was only 42 years old. Accident number 5, Bill Barackel's disappearance. Roberto only played 5 seasons on defense for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but managed to win 4 cups in one of the best Leaf Cup runs of all time. In Game 5 of the 51 Stanley Cup Final, he scored the overtime and cup-winning goal. And then in the summer, he decided to board a small plane with Dr. Henry Hudson to go on a fishing trip up north in northern Ontario. But unfortunately, the plane and passengers disappeared. A total of 38 Air Force planes and 270 personnel tried to conduct the largest aviation search in Canadian history. And then that disappearance actually ruined the Leafs because they lost their momentum. But 11 years later, in 1962, a few months after winning the Stanley Cup, the Leafs learned that they found his plane with the skeletal remains of Bill Burke in Timmins, Ontario. Burke's story was the basis for the famous Tragically Hip song 50 Mission Cap, which actually is good because Tragically Hip's main lead guy, Gord something, has incurable brain cancer, which sucks. Really sucks. Number 6, Sarah Burke's training accident. This was also in the Watch Mojo Top 10 list. She was a great freestyle skier. She was helping women's extreme athletics, well, the X Games, especially the men. She was a 4-time Winter X Games gold medalist and winner of the 2005 Halfpipe World Championships. She was a pioneer for her sport, a skier doing halfpipe, and successfully got the halfpipe for skiers, including the 2014 Winter Olympics. But during a training run in Utah in January 2012, Burke fell and ruptured her vertebral artery. She passed away 9 days later at the age of 29. So sad, eh? Number 7, Len Bias and his overdose. Len Bias was one of the best players in college basketball in the late 80s. Playing for the University of Maryland, he looked good. Len Bias was even taken 2nd overall in the NBA draft behind Brad Daugherty. And basically, Boston somehow got a trade. I can't remember who they got the trade from, but anyway, Boston got number 2 and got Len Bias. And they were defending champions, and they were hoping for Boston's run to be very huge. Less than 48 hours after the draft, Len Bias died in his dorm room from a cocaine overdose. So a lot of drug issues were put in place. Maryland was put on academic suspension because of all this happening. There was controversy found. Boston didn't win a title for 22 years, and the U.S. Congress passed the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986, which brought harsher punishment for drug-related crimes, including felonies for small amounts of cocaine. People were mad because that was pretty much an act to attack black people, mostly. Number 8, Roberto Clemente's plane crash. Roberto Clemente played 18 years for the Pittsburgh Pirates, winning the NL batting title 4 times. He won the MVP in 1966 and took home 12 straight Gold Glove titles, including and also 2 World Series titles. But Clemente's admiration off-field was better than on the field because he did his charity work to try to help Latino Americans. On New Year's Eve 1972, Roberto left from Puerto Rico aboard a small plane to help with earthquake relief in Nicaragua. Unfortunately, the plane crashed near the coast of Puerto Rico, and they didn't find the body of Roberto Clemente. It was sad. I'm not sure if Clemente would have played in 73. But anyway, the 5-year waiting period of being in the Baseball Hall of Fame was waived, and baseball allowed Roberto Clemente to be in the Hall of Fame posthumously, and his number 21 was retired in Pittsburgh immediately. Number 9, Owen Hart's death. Owen Hart was the youngest of 12 children in the Hart family. And of course, the Hart family is Canada's first family of wrestling, with 6 brothers and 4 brother-in-laws being trained in the dungeon of Stu Hart's basement. Owen joined the WWE in 1988 when he wrestled under several gimmicks, including the Blue Blazer. He was even in WrestleMania 5 as the Blue Blazer. I can't believe it. He actually tried to team up with Bret, him and Hart as part of the Hart Foundation, and of course there were some issues. And Owen didn't really get the recognition before long. He actually turned heel at the 94 Royal Rumble, and he got a major win over Bret Hart at WrestleMania 10, although Bret Hart did win the WWE belt. Owen never got to carry the WWE belt. And of course, he won some Intercontinental and European titles, but anyway, as part of the publicity stunt at Over the Edge pay-per-view May 23rd, 1999, Owen Hart was to be lowered to the ring from the ceiling via harness. Unfortunately, as Owen Hart tried to get more comfortable in his harness, he might have hit the accidental release button, and the quick release disengaged early, and Bret Hart fell 90 feet to his death. Owen Hart, fell 90 feet to death on top of a turnbuckle and all that. Very sad how he died. And yes, that one was on the Watch Mojo list too. Number 10, Bill Masterton dies from hockey injury. And yes, that was also on the Watch Mojo top 10 list. But anyway, Bill Masterton played 4 years of college hockey for the U of Denver and 6 years in the minor leagues. He looked good, but unfortunately there were only 6 teams in the NHL at that time, and he was Montreal property, and he didn't think he was going to get in. So he actually quit hockey to work at Honeywell Corporation. But Minnesota got his rights in the expansion draft, and they convinced him to play hockey. 38 games into his NHL career, he was given a body check by Larry Callahan and Ron Stewart for the Golden Seals against Minnesota, January 13, 1968. Unfortunately, Masterton's bare head crashed off the ice, and it was a sickening thud. Masterton died 2 years later at 29. He's the only player in NHL history to die from an ice injury. And then the debate of wearing helmets came about in hockey. It was permanently used in 1979 for the NHL that you had to wear a helmet. It was grandfathered that if you started your career before 1979, your pro career, you're allowed to wear it. You're allowed to go bareheaded if you wish. Craig MacTavish was the last one to do that in 1987. So anyway, Bill Masterton has his trophy named after him for the player who exemplifies perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to the game of hockey. Number 11. The Munich Air Disaster. Manchester United was playing a friendly against Red Star Belgrade in Yugoslavia and tied them 3-3. They decided they had to stop in Munich to refuel the plane. They tried 2 takeoff attempts from the airport but failed, and on the 3rd attempt, a buildup of slush prevented the plane from hitting its velocity. Unfortunately, the plane went past the runway, hit a house, a tree, and smashed into a hut. There were 23 passengers dead, 8 Man U players. There were some survivors. They're called Busby's Babes because, they survived the crash, and they won the European Cup, or the Champions League, you want to call it, 10 years later in 1968 because of it. Bobby Charlton, I believe, was one of the big people who survived. One of the brightest stars to die in that crash was Duncan Edwards. So sad. Star England player. Number 12, Dale Earnhardt's death. Dale Earnhardt Sr. was a great NASCAR driver, and this was on the top 10 too. The Watch Mojo, who won 7 championships throughout his career. During the final lap of the 2001 Daytona 500, he actually bumped into Sterling Marlin's car while trying to keep 3rd place, while Michael Waltrip and Dale Jr. were fighting for 1st place. So anyway, Ken Schrader bumped into Earnhardt's car later, and the crash was huge. Earnhardt, and they thought, oh, that was minor crash, he'll be okay. But Dale Earnhardt hit his head and died of blunt trauma when it was 49 years at age 49. NASCAR changed its safety rules with the helmets and all that, and even put better fencing to catch fencing or barriers on most of its tracks. NASCAR really wanted to. Number 13 was the Lokomotiv Yaroslav Air Disaster. Lokomotiv Yaroslav of the KHL was on its way to Minsk to play when their plane crashed into the Volga River bank shortly after takeoff, bursting into flames. Only one person, an assistant trainer, survived out of the 45 passengers. I think he's still alive. But anyway, the crash shocked hockey world because it lost a lot of stars. Former stars such as Pavel Demitra, a star with St. Louis, and Ottawa, by the way. Ruslan Soleil, who was a star for Anaheim and Detroit, and one others. Carlin Strackens, who once had the most consecutive games by a defenseman. and Brad McCrimmon in the crash. There were several others such as Igor Korolev. Who else? There were a lot of other ones too. I would say Alex Karpatsev, but I might be wrong. Karpatsev. But anyway, that was hysterical. Accident number 14, the Hillsborough Stadium disaster. The 1989 FA Cup semi-final was played between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. And Hillsborough and Sheffield was ready to go. But more than 3,000 people were admitted into the central pens, nearly double the amount that the safety things said would be allowed. So unfortunately, there was a massive crush, and some had to climb over side fences to escape. 5 minutes after kickoff, a barrier collapsed, causing people to fall on top of one another. At the end of it, 96 people were killed and 700 were injured in the disaster. There were a lot of fingers to be blamed, especially the police presence and all that. But that disaster actually helped English soccer stadiums, because now they were forced to be all-seaters, such that every part of the stadium must have a seat in it, like no standing room only and all that. And lastly, the 1955 Le Mans disaster. The worst disaster in sports history happened in 1955. A British driver by the name of Mike Hawthorne turned abruptly to make his first pit stop. But behind him, a driver in a Austin Healey swerved and got crashed by French player Pierre Lefebvre. That car, the Austin Healey, crashed into a wall and added like a ramp for Lefebvre's Mercedes, which flew through the air, crashed into an embankment, and split into 3 pieces. The pieces went into the crowd, crushing and decapitating spectators. A marshal tried to throw water on the body of the Mercedes, but it didn't douse the flame. It sent bursts of flame through the crowd. The total count was suggested between 80 and 130, which is just pure amazing. All that crash. So anyway, that's all I got for this top 15. There'll be another top 10 coming up soon.